Welcome to Better Life. Let's just jump right in, because today we're doing something really special with this explainer. We're actually decoding the incredibly complex machinery of the human brain to basically hand you the ultimate user manual for your own mind. I mean, if you've ever felt stuck or maybe totally overwhelmed by stress, or you've just wondered why you literally cannot seem to break a bad habit, well, the answers aren't in some overused self-help cliché. They're actually locked right inside your own biology. So today we're going to upgrade your mental resilience and your willpower by looking right under the hood of your nervous system. Because here's the thing, top neuroscientists have literally mapped the brain to uncover the real biological reasons behind human behavior. And by looking super closely at how our brain's circuits function, they figured out exactly why we form addictive habits, why modern life gets us so deeply stressed out, and, most importantly, the actual biological pathways that the world's absolute top performers use to achieve greatness. We aren't just talking about psychology today, folks. We're talking about the literal, physical wiring of success. So, let's dive right into this user manual, shall we? We've got 6 key sections on the agenda today to help you completely master your mind. We're going to start with the brain's building blocks, then move into the architecture of memory. After that, we'll analyze motivation and high achievers, explore the addiction pathway, break down anxiety and stress, and finally, wrap things up with some highly actionable ways to upgrade your brain's willpower.
All right, moving right along to Section 1, the brain's building blocks. Let's look at the absolute fundamentals here.
So if you were to compare a human brain to, say, a rat's brain, they basically work just like Lego blocks. The base pieces? Exactly the same. It's just the complexity that differs. And the absolute most important word you need to remember about how those blocks are stacked is neuroplasticity. This is your brain's ability to actually change its physical structure in response to your environment and your daily experiences. It's highly malleable. Now, while this plasticity is absolutely at its peak during the first 25 years of your life, it never completely stops. Whatever you do, whatever you experience, your brain is actively rewiring itself to adapt to it.
And as it wires itself, it relies on 2 primary types of tissue. You've probably heard the term gray matter, right? Well, gray matter is made up of the actual cells, the neurons that produce your thoughts, your memories, and your signals. But a signal is pretty much useless if it can't go anywhere. And that is exactly where white matter comes in. Think of white matter as this massive informational superhighway. It consists of these huge bundles of fibers that carry those signals out of the brain and all the way through your body, literally turning a thought into a physical action.
Which brings us to Section 2, the architecture of memory. Because how do we actually store these experiences?
Well, whenever you experience something new, your brain forms a physical memory trace, which is called an engram. It helps to think about this using a bank teller metaphor. There's a structure deep inside your brain called the hippocampus, and it acts exactly like that bank teller. It takes the initial deposit of your new experience. But it doesn't just keep it sitting there at the front desk forever. To make that memory permanent, the hippocampus safely distributes that data out into the vast distributed vault of your brain's cortex. And that, by the way, is exactly why deeply ingrained old memories are so incredibly hard to lose.
But keep in mind, not all memories are filed the same way. We basically have procedural memory and explicit memory. Procedural memory is your muscle memory, things that just become totally automatic, like riding a bike or swimming. Once you learn it, you don't really have to actively think about the steps anymore. Explicit memory, on the other hand, relies heavily on that hippocampus we just talked about. This is your ability to consciously recall a specific conversation from your childhood or even just what you ate for dinner last night. It requires active, conscious mental effort to recall.
Okay, let's jump into Section 3, motivation and high achievers. This is where we explore the literal physical wiring for greatness.
What's really wild here is that different mentalities literally activate totally different neural pathways. Let's take a process-driven athlete like Michael Jordan. By obsessively visualizing the mechanics of a single shot, he's driving his striatum and building this absolutely bulletproof procedural memory. But then you have an outcome-driven achiever, like Michael Phelps. He used his prefrontal cortex to visualize catastrophic outcomes, like his swimming goggles filling up with water, so that his brain could actively override panic and stay completely focused on the end goal. And then, well, there's Napoleon. He operated completely out of his amygdala, which is the fear and survival center. He'd visualize all the fast and brutal ways he could die in battle, just to ensure he survived. Now, while fear absolutely works for immediate survival, the research clearly shows that falling in love with the process is by far the most sustainable way to wire your brain for long-term success.
But, our brain software definitely has a darker side too. Let's shift into section 4 to see exactly how these natural motivation loops can get completely hijacked.
Right down deep at the base of your brain is a region called the nucleus accumbens. This is your core motivation and reward center. And evolution designed this really beautiful piece of biology to reward you for vital survival behaviors, like eating a good, calorie-dense meal or drinking water when you're super thirsty. It gives you a nice little hit of dopamine so you'll repeat the behavior. But in our modern world, this ancient region is incredibly vulnerable to being totally overwhelmed.
Seriously, have you ever wondered why you just can't put your phone down even when you explicitly promise yourself you will? I'll tell you a secret. It's not a moral failure. Mindlessly scrolling social media, eating tons of refined sugar, or gambling, these activities hijack this exact survival circuitry. They provide such massive, incredibly rapid, unnatural dopamine hits that your baseline for pleasure gets completely distorted. So your willpower just struggles, because your biology is literally screaming at you that this rapid dopamine hit is essential for your survival. It's wild.
And all that constant stimulation leads us perfectly right into section 5. Let's explore how our modern, incredibly complex world overloads our ancient threat detection systems on a daily basis.
To understand this, we really have to separate fear from anxiety. Fear is an obvious, present threat. Like if there's a hungry tiger in the room with you, your body's intense physical reaction is fear, and honestly, it will save your life. Anxiety, however, triggers the exact same intense physical panic response, but to an invisible or perceived threat. There's no actual tiger in the room, but your palms are sweating, your heart is racing, and your body is absolutely convinced you are in mortal danger.
And in today's world, that invisible tiger is almost always chronic social stress. We're talking about things like a toxic boss, cyberbullying, or just constantly comparing your life to others on social media. When you experience this kind of stress daily, it creates a highly destructive hormonal loop. It's constantly spiking your stress hormone, cortisol. And because your body firmly believes it needs to run from a predator, it physically shuts down your digestion, halts your reproductive functions, and sends your entire immune system into exhaustive hypervigilance. It quite literally breaks down your body from the inside out.
So, how do we actually fix these glitches? Well, that brings us to our final part, Section 6, upgrading your brain's willpower. Let's look at rewiring for resilience.
I want you to think of your brain like an apartment building. Genetically speaking, we all basically have the same biological blueprint, right? The kitchen is here, the bedroom is over there. But our daily habits, our discipline, and our environments, they act as the interior decorators. Based on what you do every single day, you are furnishing the rooms of your brain differently. You can decorate it with anxiety and addiction, or you can choose to decorate it with focus and calm.
And to decorate it well, you really need to put your brain through neurobics, basically workouts for your mind. You build real willpower by forcing the brain to do difficult things that actively postpone immediate gratification. This forces neuroplasticity to kick in. Try learning a really difficult new language, or maybe playing a musical instrument where you're just terrible at first. Even small things matter. Try brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Or spend 10 minutes of your daily walk just walking completely backward. These awkward, uncomfortable tasks force your brain to form new, challenging neural pathways and train it to embrace discipline over cheap dopamine.
But alongside challenging your brain, you absolutely must balance it out. You have to actively engage your parasympathetic system. See, we spend all day in our sympathetic fight-or-flight mode, totally hyped up on stress and caffeine. It is a strict biological necessity to consciously practice rest and digest activities. Breath work, deep relaxation, genuinely slowing down. Listen, this isn't just fluffy self-care. It is actively shrinking the fear centers of your brain and lowering that toxic cortisol we talked about.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really direct challenge. You now know that your brain is highly plastic, that it craves routine, but that it really only grows through friction. So, what one difficult, uncomfortable thing are you going to do today to physically change the wiring of your brain? The user manual is completely in your hands now. Get out there, embrace the process, and I will see you